All right. Good evening, community. We are excited to be here again with you tonight, having another Live Black Experience community dialogue with you. And I am particularly excited for our guest this evening, who will be speaking to us about taking care of self and the importance of men's health, and particularly the importance of Black men's health. Dr. Charles B. Evans II. Dr. Ben is an Arizona native who grew up in Flagstaff, Arizona, and earned his undergraduate degree from Northern Arizona University. He then attended the University of Arizona College of Medicine in Tucson, Arizona, where he earned his medical degree. In 2007, he completed his internal medicine residency training in Phoenix and thereafter worked as a hospitalist for several years before embarking on his solo outpatient medical career. He is an avid traveler who enjoys spending his free time exploring Mexico, Central and South America, and as such, he is an experienced and skilled bilingual in Spanish, board certified internist who takes pride in helping his patients live healthier, more functional, and more fulfilling lives. His special interests include male testosterone replacement therapy, substance abuse and addiction treatment, as well as fitness training and healthy weight loss methodologies. He is the owner of Scottsdale Internal Medicine and the Men's Vitality Center. Welcome, Dr. Evans.
Well, thank you for having me, Kara. How's everyone doing?
Absolutely. We're doing well, and I'm excited to have a chance to chat with you tonight and
Bless
just
you.
take us through some questions about you and your career, and then digging in on some things in terms of Black health and Black male health in particular.
Wonderful.
So, if you don't mind kicking us off, just telling us a little bit about yourself and some of your experience growing up in Flagstaff.
Hmm. So, as you mentioned, I grew up in Flagstaff, Arizona, a small town in northern Arizona, about 72 miles south of the Grand Canyon, about 143 miles north of Phoenix. So, it's in the high country, as they say in Flagstaff. I think a lot of people think about Arizona as being desert, but it's very diverse, especially the northern Arizona region. Lots of, the altitude there is 7,000 feet, just the city itself. And then when you get to the mountains, like the peaks, it's 12,000, more than 12,000 feet. So it's lots of snow, four seasons. It was a smaller kind of a college community, but it was a great place to grow up. I loved growing up there. And as you know, my sister, my niece still live up in Flagstaff.
Yeah. So for you growing up, was it challenging? We always have conversations about what it means to be Black on the mountain, and your sister, Dr. Coral, has often shared a lot about the unique experiences that you both had growing up. But I'd love to hear from you. Were there challenges for you growing up in Flagstaff? Was it a good experience? Just kind of what was that like for you?
It was a great experience. Like I've always said, Flagstaff was a great place to grow up. It was a great place to grow up, especially in those days, back in the old days. So, I mean, it was, as far as a challenge, it was the only thing I knew. So, that being said, I don't believe it was a challenge when I hear about the way other folks have grown up. I didn't grow up with a lot of money at all. But again, that experience growing up with lack of economic upward mobility, it was a lot different in Flagstaff than it was if I had grown up within the same situation in Detroit or LA or New York. So I have to say that growing up in Flagstaff was actually a blessing. So being black in Arizona, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, but there's not a lot of black folks in Arizona in general, much less in Flagstaff. I'm pretty sure that the African American or Black population in Arizona is less than 10%. Those out there can Google this or Wikipedia for me. But in those days, growing up in the 70s, 80s, the Flagstaff Black population was less than 0.5%. So if you have a city of 45 to 50,000 people, you have about, holy moly, what, 500 or so, yeah, about 500 black folks. So yeah, obviously it's a very small community. I think that number has risen to about 1 to 1.5%. And what is there in Flagstaff now? 75, 80,000 people.
Yeah.
So again, it's you have about 700, thousand of black folks in a fairly large city. So obviously there wasn't a lot of us. But that being said, I mean, when I think about what you would call a stereotypical, remember I say stereotypical, there can always be underlying discrimination and racism that's not, not seen and heard. When we talk about stereotypical, like direct verbal confrontations due to your race, I can think of maybe one incident, and that was on a basketball court, and that resulted in a little tussle, and that was it. So, so they're off the Flagstaff. As far as your stereotypical uh, discrimination cases that you might have heard about in the Deep South, and said it just wasn't, at least it wasn't open, and not even that wasn't open. I think there's just a lot of good folks in Flagstaff, and it just wasn't necessarily a thing there. So it wasn't open, and I think just the community in general wasn't steeped in that type of behavior.
Yeah. Uh, what made you decide to pursue medicine?
That's an interesting question. That's a great question. And to be honest, I don't have a wonderful answer. I think the best reason I can give when I've been asked that over the years is due to my surroundings. So a lot of my friends, their fathers were doctors, lawyers. Some of my best friends growing up playing sports, and actually one of my friends, actually I think a couple of my friends' sons are still practicing in their father's practices from generationally. So I think it's likely the biggest reason. I think I just had uh, some of the folks that helped me out a lot growing up. And some of the great examples I saw of families, the dads that were present were physicians.
Okay. Yeah, it's always interesting to me to hear how different people got into um, different career pursuits. I was an English major, and I just always loved to read and write and those sorts of things. So it just kind of was natural to me. Were you always interested in the sciences or biology
Well, I
or?
was really interested in science per se, but I was also my sister and I both, from the time we were, geez, Laura, I remember all we did was read, read, read. My mom was a big reader, so we would read sometimes books, literally books a day. I mean, we spent our summer walking back and forth from our house on the east side to my grandma's house on the south side, and there was a little bookstore on on San Francisco Street, right north of Butler. I think it's, well, I forgot what it was in, but it's Butler now. It was called the Dragon's Plunder. So it's this little used bookstore. So my sister and I spent, I don't know how many hours in that bookstore. We used to walk to the little city library, which was on Beaver. I think it's, don't you? Isn't the playhouse there? Isn't there like a playhouse where they act? There's like an acting
Oh,
playhouse there. That used to be,
yeah,
yeah, it used to be the city library. So we used to go there. I mean, that was just what we did. We read. So that was always my interest.
yeah.
Mm.
So you are focused in a lot of different areas, or at least you have a lot of different special interests. What made a focus in men's health in particular an important focus for you?
I think it's one of those things, like always when I look back on, I was always an athlete, and I was always into lifting weights. I was always into that the fitness community, so to speak. And so I think it's kind of a natural fit when the opportunity came along to be a part of this movement, men's health and testosterone replacement therapy. That is just it's one of those being in the right place at the right time type of situations. And I just kind of took the ball and ran with it. So it's always been it just fit me.
One thing that I'm really curious about is what your experiences were like in your residency and in your medical studies.
Mhm.
Because one of the things that we hear about a lot is the struggles of men of color, in particular, in medical fields, because so many of the guides and training tools and so forth aren't really developed with them or their communities in mind.
Mhm.
So, was that at all your experience, or did you have any challenges there?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very real. When you talk about standard, I think you're talking about standardized tests, likely, and standardized test making. I think that is a very real thing when I think about it, as far as, because I don't know how it is now. Again, I haven't, I got out of medical school in 2002. I remember my particular med school class, there was, I think three of us guys, three black guys, and I think it was one or two black girls in a class size of 100 at that time. I know that the class sizes have grown significantly since then, but again, the ratios are more than likely the same. So there definitely wasn't any type of significant community, Black community in med school of itself, maybe in the greater, and again, this is Arizona, so possibly it's different. And University of Alabama med school, University of Mississippi med school, I don't know, but I think generally speaking, if you look through all the med schools throughout the United States, the Black population is going to be significantly, less than that of all others. So when you're looking for a sense of community there, it's probably going to be, I don't say it's going to be an issue, but it's going to be something you have to kind of look for. It's not just going to smack you in the face. Now, as far as testing, I mean, a lot of people say that, science is science. Doesn't matter if you speak Russian, Spanish, English. Science is science. But that being said, I think there are significant, sociologic differences, the way people express themselves, the way people have approached the world, what's been taught to them beforehand, and that, and that's something that goes without saying, that education varies depending on who it's coming from, what community is being given to, what school systems, etc. So I think that is a very real thing. So myself personally, I wasn't a great, honestly, I wasn't a great studier in college in and of itself. I was I was a great crammer. So I was a guy that would have a test tomorrow, and I would wait to start studying. Say the test was on Wednesday, I would start studying on Monday, and I would do 48 hours studying, and I'd get an A, and then everything would be out of my mind, 2 hours after the test. So that does not translate well at all into medical school. When you think about a full-time load in undergraduate is about 18 credit hours. Medical school, full-time load is about 36, 40. So if you're trying to do the last-minute cramming, you're going to find yourself out of sorts. So yeah, the first semester I found myself significantly out of sorts, but shortly thereafter I kind of figured out, okay, this is something you have to step up your game, and it wasn't a problem after that point. So as far as the curriculum, it's all black and white, so to speak. I mean, if science is science, but I think the way it's approached, some of the examples that might be given on tests are foreign, and I think that's more of a. So when you see there's all this discussion about discrepancies in test scores, etc., and people are trying to figure out how to attribute that. So yes, a long way to answer a simple question. Yes, I think that it's standardized tests, depending on depending on your perspective, it could definitely affect how easily or how well you perform in tests in a standardized environment.
Yeah, I'm remembering, and I want to say it was just a few years ago. There were reports, and it was kind of blowing up on like Instagram and TikTok.
Mm.
The young Black medical student who was revolutionizing things in his course simply because he started changing the illustrations to people of color,
Yeah,
and talking about some of the unique aspects of um, how different maybe skin diseases even show up on somebody with more pigmented skin and things like that.
I haven't seen that, but when you think about, for instance, a field such as dermatology, it's
Yeah.
very interesting you mention that. It's extremely difficult to find dermatologists, for example, who can deal with know anything about, really, much less deal with, but know anything about, say, a Black skin condition such as, say, razor bumps, pseudofolliculitis barbi. So again, so that's one of those things that you can search high and low for someone who can like treat it, or has a background in it, or has actually done more than just a cursory study on how to treat this very common condition in Black men. Or for instance, keloids, things of that nature. I mean, there's standard, all right, when injected with some corticosteroids and hope it goes away. But there's very dermatology is it's a great field, and there's a lot. I mean, treatments for every type of skin disorder. But I found personally myself, just personally for myself, I'm looking for solutions for skin problems, much less trying to refer patients of color, and we're talking about Black men, for treatment for such. There is a severe paucity of people who have ever seen the condition or would know how to treat it, other than just doing a PubMed or Google search and saying, "Oh, this looks good." Maybe on the East Coast and somewhere like Washington, D.C., Atlanta, where there's a larger Black population, I'm assuming that the dermatologists there, I'm assuming there's a lot more Black dermatologists specifically, and who have a patient population of Black folks that know how to treat them a little bit more effectively than otherwise. But yeah, it's an excellent. I haven't seen that TikToker, but that's an excellent point. And I have zero problem understanding that or seeing how that could be beneficial, actually seeing characters or animations of yourself as opposed to the typical what you normally see when you're out medical school. I don't think I ever saw one black model, patient model, patient instructor, black cadaver, nothing all throughout my years of medical school.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was just chatting with my dad and telling him that we were going to have this conversation. He's back east in
Mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania, and the whole concept of different needs in terms of dermatology came up because of an experience that he had not too long ago, where he was in with the doctor and they were getting ready to prescribe a whole course of medication for something, and I believe it was a black nurse came in and just kind of looked at him and said, "That's not what he needs. That's just his skin. Like that's you're about to say something
I,
that's completely
I
uh,
believe it. I
yeah."
mean, I believe that 100%. Specifically, I talk about myself personally, razor bumps. So I used to have severe razor bumps. And fortunately, I was I'm in the field, and I actually owned a med spa with laser machines. So I wish you could see if I had thought about beforehand. I have a before and after what my neck used to look like and what's looked like over the last decade. It's like night and day. So you have experiences like that. And again, fortunately, I had a machine. I was able to adjust. Again, you have to use lasers differently on different skin types. It might have someone with olive color skin, someone with black skin. You have to treat it significantly different than someone who has, say, someone who's a redhead or someone who's blonde. So these things aren't. There's just basic knowledge, but as far as the trial and error, when you're realizing, dang, you need to do a different prep for my skin. I mean, it hurts a heck of a lot more in the dark skin due to the heat buildup from the pigment from the laser. All these things, I think a lot of people, because I think about the med spas here in Arizona, say for instance Scottsdale. I'm assuming for every 1,000 white folks that go in to get their skincare done, there's maybe one or two black people, and I don't think that's a really exaggeration. To be honest with you, it's just obviously I don't have any numbers in front of me, but I really don't think that's much of an exaggeration. So to be able to, so over the years, I've told people, I've shown people, for instance, my before and after, and said this is what you should do to not just treat but eliminate razor bumps. It's there not only eliminate the razor bumps, but the hyperpigmentation that you've seen that comes along with it. It's amazing, but and again, that's one of those things that I have to stumble upon it just by treating myself. That I don't think a lot of people in the community. I would go as far as say I guarantee a lot of people in the community, even board certified dermatologists, don't have that experience because they just don't see people of color.
Yeah. So, how do you go about, or how should others go about, sort of advocating for themselves in those sorts of situations? Because it's really tough when you are thinking that something is either being misdiagnosed or something's being missed because of that cultural aspect,
Mhm.
and having to speak up a little bit more. And there's already such hesitancy that exists in particularly in the Black communities, going into hospitals and medical treatments because of, well, all sorts of history there. But um, what do you think is a positive way to kind of advocate for yourself in those sorts of situations?
So, as you touched on, when I've had this conversation with my non-black friends, non-black colleagues, when you talk about the hesitancy for of certain groups to go into the hospital, there's lots of reasons for that. There's cultural reasons, there's historical reasons, there's social reasons. So we talk about men in general, and there's a bunch of numbers. Like women are going to throughout the course of once I think when they're in the pediatric ages, men and women, they go to the doctor at about the same rate from the time of I don't know, time you're born till your time you're 18. Thereafter is when the huge discrepancy starts. Women generally are going to have about 40% at least more office visits, not hospital visits. Again, we're not talking about actually acute illnesses. We're talking about, when I talk about visits to a provider, a medical provider, we're talking about preventative care. A woman, during the course of her post-pediatric age will be seen by physicians at least 40% more than men of the same age, no matter what, all throughout all colors in general. So when you talk about, the problem with men a lot of times is number one, it's social. We're taught to not complain, grin and bear it. There's many derogatory terms for guys who do complain, guys who are always sick, guys are going to the doctor for a scratch because they have a headache, et cetera, et cetera. So that keeps a lot of men just in general. Then there's more cultural things. Say if you're Hispanic, say if you're Black, it runs even deeper than just an overall general man ego. Now we're into some pretty severe. And this is where I'm looking for severe, and I mean severe. I mean is pretty entrenched social norms of how a man is supposed to be and what a man is supposed to do. And complaining about having a toe ache, complaining about having a headache, complaining because you got chest pain, complaining because your stomach hurts. Those are not things that men do. Men, in the world, men have to take some Tylenol, put a Band-Aid on, and go down to the mines because they have a lot of other responsibilities. Not that women do. I'm speaking in cultural, historical, and social terms. Now, when we talk about Black folks in general, especially Black men, as you touched on, a lot of people don't realize, and I think that's been glossed over a lot of times, that Black folks have a very real historical reason to kind of avoid and fear the medical establishment. And we can go back into all the experiments that have been not just this is something that's hearsay. This is facts. Some of the experiments that have been conducted on Black people due to their lack of citizen standards, that lack of that people looking at us as property or animals. So if you can look throughout history, anytime someone thinks of another being as property, generally speaking, unless that property has value, and I guess you can say a lot of slaves have value because they were working for the plantation, or whatever, and they might have been treated well, but generally speaking, at the same time, you're like livestock. You're going to be, if there's an experiment to be had, when they're drawing straws, and who's going to be the one that's going to swallow that drink and see what happens. Who's going to speak to any one of us. So then we get to stuff like more known, such as Tuskegee trials and all these things. So my point is, there's a reason historically, culturally, why more Black folks, even more Black men, Black people in general, but Black men are even more avoidant than a man across all other ethnicities would be to go to the doctor. So that's another reason that, and the biggest thing about going to the doctor, I always tell people the biggest way to prevent disease is prevention. Again, I always tell people, I mean, one of my sayings is, again, what's the best way to lose weight? And the answer is people go through this whole spiel, do this, do this, do this, do this, watch your calories, exercise, don't eat this, don't eat that. And after people go through my spiel, I tell them, no, the best way to lose weight is don't get fat in the first place. And so it's the same thing. So it's that same way as far as health. The best way to prevent disease and to not get a disease is be preventative. Do your colonoscopies, check your prostate, check your basic lab. Some people in their whole adult life have never had a blood draw. They don't know what their blood sugar is. They don't know what their kidneys up to. They don't know if they have high cholesterol. Some people have never had their blood pressure checked until they're in their 40s and 50s. So imagine that if you're someone who has uncontrolled hypertension since the age of 20, and the first time you ever show up into a doctor is at the age of 45 or 50 because maybe you had a heart attack or something. You've had 20 years of your heart as a pumping against this pressure, growing in size, becoming more functioning more and more poorly and more irregularly as the years go on. So a lot of these things are not something that just poof happened. These are things that have been in the process for years, if not decades, due to the fact that folks are scared to go to the doctor.
Yeah. It's really interesting, some of what you talked about, because I literally was just having this conversation with my dad about different experiences where either with him advocating for his parents when they were receiving care in their older years, or even one of the memories that I was having was either him or my mom being in with me when I was younger and having I think it was some sort of spinal exam where the doctor was applying a great deal of pressure. And I said, that hurts. And their response was basically, no, you have a higher tolerance for pain, so this shouldn't hurt.
Wow. What do you
And
mean higher because you're black? Was it insinuating? Wow. Sheesh.
that was, I think, what the
You're
insinuation
you're
was.
you're sturdy. You're sturdy.
Yeah. And my whichever parent it was just stopped the conversation there, and we left. And
Excellent.
I
Yeah.
remember that. But um, so it's just interesting to me how some of those different things have been perpetuated over time, and how we're seeing some of the shifts these days as we get into the later 2020s, or
Mhm. Mhm.
into the 2020s, um, as people are becoming more conscious and aware of that.
Mhm.
Um, do you think that consciousness, or that increased awareness of those kind of historic stereotypes of, you know, a black tolerance for pain, or
Mhm.
different things, is the result of some of the social justice things that have happened over the past couple of years, and just increasing awareness through some of that historical
Yeah.
lens conversations, or
I think it would have to be as far as yeah. When I think about certain fields of medicine, when I think about certain treatment modalities, things that used to be not even considered are now the standard of care. So I think with anything, I have these arguments, not arguments or discussions with people all the time about, oh look, medicine they got this wrong. 25 years ago they got this wrong. I go, yeah, well, I mean, such as life. At that time, it's just, something. Things are always changing. It's one thing you can guarantee. Your best knowledge at one time might not be the best knowledge a week from now. So you always have to use what you have at hand, what experiments have shown you, and I'm sure at some point in the future you'll find out, dang, that was way off. But that's all you had at that time. So yeah, to answer your question, absolutely. I think with more awareness, with social media, social justice, with more, with that now they have the, Men's Health Month. Before and generally speaking, the country, it's always been, Mother's Day, this day, and men were like, yeah, tough it up, tough it out, buddy. But now there's actually, there's prostate awareness, there's Men's Health Month. People know about testosterone replacement therapy. So yeah, absolutely. When I think about the trends and how things have changed over the years, and what guys used to be able to say, like, "No, I don't need testosterone, I don't need testosterone, blah blah what." So now people are like, heck yeah, give me some testosterone. As far as if that's what's going to keep me, if that could possibly be uh, the etiology of whatever is ailing me, or whatever it is. I think a lot more men are coming in, hey, my wife or the news, or I saw this article says I need to get my prostate checked. The wife, the news, the article, or I was talking to one of my buddies, and he had some problems with his heart, and it found out he had this. So I want to make sure that's not me. So I'm gonna get my checked. A lot of guys come in and say, man, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. But somebody was telling me, man, you better go get checked. So I decided to do so. Or I was at the gym and this happened. Or I'm on social media. My favorite fitness influencer, who's only 26 years old, just died of a heart attack. Why is that? And there's some pretty obvious reasons why that is. But they say, well, I just want to make sure I come and get my labs checked. So that's not me. So yeah, absolutely. I think social media, for all the bad it's caused in the world, I think also it's done a lot of helping people become more aware in a lot of areas, especially and specifically since we're talking about health. Absolutely.
yeah. To that same end, a lot of folks have been um, celebrating the life of Chadwick Boseman over the past couple of
Mhm,
weeks,
mhm,
because he
mhm,
would have just celebrated his 47th birthday
mhm,
right at the end of November.
mhm,
And it re-raised the question of uh, the unique needs of particularly Black men,
mhm,
seeing his silent struggle, and
mhm,
then death from a silent struggle that he was living with, that kind of being the spark for getting more men
mhm,
to think about going in and getting some of those examinations and things.
mhm,
Um, what in your mind is, does it take to keep that from being the measure of, watching someone die
mhm,
is the thing that sparks us to start having some of these conversations, or taking them more seriously?
mhm,
How can we work, maybe as a community, or within our families, or whatever social structures,
mhm,
uh, to really start convincing people, particularly within the Black community, but even broader, to start having these conversations before it gets to that point?
See, I don't think Chadwick Boseman or a celebrity is necessarily a good example. I mean, it's a good thing because they're obviously well known, and
Yeah.
so anything they could use their their star power to bring, light, to bring knowledge, to bring exposure to an issue, which is great. But again, I think that's kind of a different situation because Chadwick Boseman wasn't poor.
Mhm.
Chadwick Boseman had access to the finest medical care in the world. So if he died, so that's one of those situations that you know, and the medical field sometimes we're very cavalier about things, but there's certain things it's just like certain things are going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it, unfortunately. If there's certain if you and obviously with him, he had a pretty aggressive form of cancer. And some of these things that you can, no matter how much money you have, how much access you have to preventive care, et cetera, et cetera. That's just how things are going to ultimately end up. So I think the better question. It's good. It's not good. I guess it's if someone like a Chadwick Boseman, if there's a platform saying, hey, you'll you should go, you should start having whatever, you should have maybe have your liver enzymes checked. I forget what did he have? What type of cancer did he have? You recall?
I think pancreatic.
Pancreatic cancer. So again, I don't know. Again, it depends on what the causes of pancreatic cancer was. I never heard about him doing a lot of drinking. I never heard. I mean, so it depends what the cause is. And again, some things, if it's genetic, okay, cool. Because he had some sort of genetic disorder, for example, but people have genetic predisposition to sickle cell disease or something. If you have two folks getting together, having children, okay, we can do genetic testing and see if you're a higher risk for this. If so, this is what we can possibly do to prevent it, or et cetera, et cetera. So for someone like him, yeah, I mean that would be a platform saying, again, if it's not a one-off, because sometimes things are just purely just random luck of the draw, and it's really not indicated to start doing all this massive testing for something that isn't a regular occurrence. So if it is something that is a regular common occurrence, it has a high incidence. Okay, to prevent it, we should have a more preventative effort and start testing at, say, if your parent face like say colon disease, if your grandfather, your dad, your mom, your sister, their brother, they all had colon cancer at the age of 45, before the age of 45, you darn well better start doing colonoscopies and screening at the age of 35. So those are things that are for preventative in nature, trying to nip something in the bud that is proven to be of a high incidence in the world or in your particular gene pool, your family. So I think so for Chadwick Boseman, if I was going to use his example as a platform, I would say, and for me, I have to do a little more exactly how he came about his cancer and what they think the reason why. But other than that, I would say, hey, this is an example for a young man, a young, extremely successful, extremely talented young Black man who died at the peak of his powers due to a health issue. So if this could happen to him, who has all this access to all healthcare, yeah, it could happen to everybody else. But the idea is to be preventative in nature if you can. Let's start doing stuff like checking your blood pressure when you're 20, checking your cholesterol, checking your hemoglobin A1C. So you can use examples, sad examples like him, as kind of a lot of times human beings learn better from pain than they learn from pleasure, or fear than they do from optimism. So this could possibly happen to you. And so it's in order to kind of prevent that, these are the steps that we need to kind of take long before this raises its ugly head.
Yeah, thank you for that. And one of the things that you mentioned early in your answer there was just the fact that he was at the peak of his career, and the difference between him being someone with wealth and others who don't have that benefit. Um, what are your thoughts on? We've had conversations through LBE in the past about the social determinants of health and the unique impacts within the Black community in particular. But what would you say is something that we need to understand about the social determinants of health?
See, so that's huge. Like you said, someone like Chadwick Boseman can go to anywhere he wants. I mean, not only can he go anywhere he wants, he can make a phone call and say, or he wouldn't, his representative say, and Chadwick Boseman has a cough, and it's okay. We're going to clear out the clinic, and he can come in at it's 2 o'clock. He can come in at 2:06. The rest of us, like for instance, I was talking to a patient yesterday. Her husband has all kinds of neurologic issues, and it's been going on for months. I go, sheesh, how come they haven't referred you to a neurologist? She goes, they have, but we don't have an appointment until March of 2024. Something myself, holy crap, this guy's been dealing with this neurologic issue, a decline, it's literally for the last 4 months. And he can't get in and see a neurologist until March of 2024. I mean, it's just insane when you think about it. So he's already declining. He's just expected to just keep declining unless maybe he's so bad he can just go to ER and get immediate neurology. But I mean, it's ludicrous when you think about it. So again, like you were saying, someone like Chadwick Boseman doesn't have that type of experience that the rest of us has. I guarantee if he or anyone in his sphere had an issue like that, they wouldn't be waiting 7 months to get in and see a specialist. I mean, I think that's something that goes without saying. So for the rest of us, not even people, the rest of us, some of us. So let's talk about people, not just the rest of us who might be doing okay, people who aren't doing okay at all, people who are on the streets, people who have chronic disease already. And as we see in this country, that is generally a socio-economic thing. And unfortunately, our community, Black folks and minorities, we're talking about Black people, generally fall more into that community. So you have to assume that there's a lot of people who not only don't have access to great healthcare, not even to regular healthcare, to no healthcare. So when we talk about preventative health and preventing all these issues that are, I mean, to be honest with you, people are going to get sick. People are going to have chronic disease. This is not, hopefully, I mean, it is going to happen. Someone's going to get hit by a bus tomorrow, unfortunately, but it's going to happen. So people have no access. So those are the ones that are kind of falling through the crack. And unfortunately, a lot of them have Black and brown faces. So the idea is, how can we get the word out or prevention to them? And that's just a matter of resources. And unfortunately, there's just not enough resources to go around. So that's when it's going to take more of a, push for politicians, legal, and also just people in the community, people in society in general. To a lot of times, it's going to have to be private funded for programs to kind of push for community health. Because when you think about it, a lot of people think, oh, it's not going to happen to me. So this whatever's happening over there doesn't affect my neighborhood. I'm fine. But eventually, just like it's been proven all throughout history, you can only live fat on the hog for so long, and other people's not before things start happening in your neighborhood as well. And I think we've seen that very clearly in the United States of America. You can't just leave problems in the ghetto and don't expect that they're going to spill over into the country club. You have to kind of take care of all of society in general in order to kind of keep social rest. So I think it's very important for the downtrodden to have access to preventive, not just acute care, but to preventive care, because that's going to help society in general as far as debt, as far as money, as far as spending, as far as loss of GDP or loss of production due to illnesses, due to chronic diseases, due to cancer, due to heart disease, due to untreated high blood pressure, kidney disease, heart disease due to untreated diabetes, prevention of the need to treat people with cancer because you caught this at an early clip. I think all these things are extremely important, not to mention mental health and the issues that come along with that.
In preparation for our conversation, I was reading an interview with Dr. Daryl Wade. He's the founder of Black Men's Wellness, and he talked about the health of Black men and the disproportionate, what he calls epidemic level impacts of things like high blood pressure, hypertension, and chronic health disease among Black men. And he spoke about it as really an epidemic that has been, what he said was severely under-addressed because so many Black men don't know about that particular disproportionate impact within our own community. What are your thoughts on that?
In the United States, and I don't have the exact numbers. My numbers are approximate, but the idea is solid. So women in general, I think their average age lifespan is 79 point some years. Men, all race men, I think it's 73. So when you now, so that's just in general. Then you start breaking down differences between black women, white women, and black men, and white men, black men, and black women. So black men of all these, but we're talking about the larger. I think other than Native Americans, black men have the lowest life expectancy of all races in the United States of America. So when you start looking at, and then we talk about disease, the proportion of these diseases. Number one leading cause of death in the United States is going to be cardiac disease. And that second leading cause of death is going to be a cancer. And in men, it's going to be prostate cancer. So when you look at prostate cancer, the ratio of black men who suffer from prostate cancer, who die or have mortality and morbidity from prostate cancer is about, and again, don't quote me on the numbers, but like I said, like the idea is solid, not the idea, the fact is solid that there's a good 30 to 40% more black men who are going to have mortality, meaning death, obviously, and morbidity, meaning the side effects, the health consequences of advanced prostate cancer that wasn't caught earlier on. And we can say it's the exact same thing about hypertension. We definitely say, obviously, as far as when we talk about death by violence, obviously things of this nature, and we talk, and diabetes. So these are things that I think are due to, absolutely, as we've been talking this whole time, historical reasons, socioeconomic reasons, and just social reasons in general. So I think the lack, no, I don't really know if I say there's a lack of education. It's hard to say in 2023 there's a lack of education because education is at the fingertips. I think it's more of a lack of making that priority maybe in the community, making that priority, like, kind of just like just constantly a drumbeat. Check your blood sugar, drumbeat. Get your prostate checked, drumbeat. Check your blood, check your blood pressure. So again, education. I mean, if someone wants to learn how to play Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix, they can pull up on YouTube, and there's literally a 5-year-old with 7 different cameras showing his fretting hand, his strumming hand, and showing you how to play. So there's, if someone wants to learn how to drywall a house, it's there. So it's not the lack of education; it's the fact of just prioritization, making it really important in our community, that those type of things. So I think it's almost like it's just that's the way it goes. God willing. Historically we've had these problems, and that's just the way it is. I think it's like, historically, but we can do something about it.
Yeah, to that same end, and one of the things that Dr. Wade talks about is what he calls the medical debt that America owes to the Black community in particular, and especially to Black men. Are there other health challenges or concerns that rise to that level in your mind? Things that our community and the broader community need to be paying more attention to right now as we're heading into 2024?
Yep, mental health. Mental health is the obvious thing that comes to my mind, and this is something I think is more. I was having this conversation with someone yesterday. Is more as we age, as I age, it's more the obvious mental illness that exists out in the world becomes more and more apparent. Becomes more and more apparent when you're driving down the road. You see more and more homeless people, and I'm not saying this in a derogatory sense whatsoever. I'm saying that a lot of people who end up homeless, a lot of people who end up on drugs. I don't think a lot of people don't realize that a lot of people end up that way are almost self-medicating some undiagnosed mental illness. They take a drug or medication, something that makes them feel better, makes them feel normal. And unfortunately, this whatever they're taking has some very deleterious, addictive potential, and it's a downward spiral. I think, the more it's funny when you're younger, you can just judge. But when you get older, you start realizing things are not as simple as they seem. So I think a lot of times we see people, they were trying to treat something as undiagnosed. And I think a lot of times if there were more, and then when I just see, especially after COVID, when you see just how people are, it's just like this perceptible just anger that just kind of just is just permeating the society. People are just ready to resort to violence. Their impulse control is so low. You see, there's just a lot of this is just, to me, in my opinion, there's a lot of untreated mental illness, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of access or acknowledgement that that exists. Now, not only speak about specifically in the Black community, absolutely, I think all of us who have grown up and all of us who've grown up within Black society, and again, not speaking derogatory, we all have family members. We think about our surroundings, and then you start thinking about the reasons. If you have institutionalized discrimination, racism, constant high levels of stress, depending on the environment, depending where you live, what you're suffering from just the Black experience, which is a very real thing. You realize that not everyone can sustain that level of just constant stress, fear, anger without affecting them mentally as well as physically. So as far as, so we talk about a Black debt, a medical society owes a debt to the Black community. Absolutely, because again, a lot of these things have been manufactured. Yeah, and there's no pointing fingers. When I speak about things, I speak about just facts and reality. And it's both. And again, just because a person still has a responsibility to themselves to try to seek out care and kind of treat whatever ails them, but at the same time, a lot of times they just don't know where to go. So I think this very thing. So when I think about things that are existing that are a direct result of an experience that a lot of folks have lived in this country is mental illness.
And sticking to that point, because I 100% agree with you. And one of the things that I have found so uh, challenging over the past couple of years, particularly after the new or renewed attentions that were paid to the Black community in the wake of things like the murder of George Floyd. Um, as we came into and lived through the COVID pandemic,
Mm.
one of the things that I found really interesting were the studies towards kind of the second and third year of the pandemic, so last year and coming into this year, um, that were talking about how the narrative and the level of empathy or on the critical impacts of COVID dropped significantly as studies started to show that it was having higher impacts on communities of color.
Mm.
And so, would you say that at the same time as we're having this mental health crisis, and I would agree with you that we are in crisis stages when it comes to mental health, would you say that we're also experiencing a bit of an empathy crisis in that just emotional and
Mm.
empathy and sympathy shift that's happened over the past couple of years?
I think in any society, and specifically the United States, since that's where we live, there's always a lack of empathy when something is, again, I think this works all directions. When something is happening, when something doesn't affect you, when
Mm.
something doesn't affect you, and this is a very real phenomenon. It's extremely easy to spot. And when we talk about COVID, when we talk about certain things such as the opiate epidemic versus the crack epidemic, and how the country responded to those separate epidemics, and the response to those separate epidemics was extremely different because of why,
Yeah.
because of who those epidemics affected. So this is something that's is plain to see as, so we're looking at you other right here, and this is not even a debatable point. So as far as, yes, the answer is, I get into these little answers sometimes, but the simple answer is absolutely 100% that when I think it's also general human nature, but basically, the United States is a long history of that. It's kind of entrenched. When something does not affect the dominant society, it's really not a big deal.
I want to shift a little bit more because we've talked about some really heavy questions there, and I have to say you really helped guide me to some of those different questions, and I'm very grateful for the conversation. But I want to give our audience an opportunity to get to know more about you as a practitioner. I heard a lot of great things about you from Dr. Coral.
Mhm.
I know that you have just a great reputation within the community, and from talking with you tonight, it's clear that you're very thoughtful and community minded, and just focusing in on a lot of really important things. So, I'd love to hear from you both how you practice medicine and why you do things the way that you do them.
Hmm. So, so how I practice medicine? Well, it's kind of most. To be honest with you, most of them I don't really consider it as practicing medicine, and the reason why I say that is a lot of my patients, I've literally known a lot of my patients for 12, 13 years, not just known them. Some of my patients have actually been in my clinic every single week, barring vacation or something, for 12, 13 years. So imagine if you've seen, I mean, so it's more than just like a patient experience when you've been seeing someone weekly for 12 years. I mean, I've seen these patients 100 times more than I've seen my sister, my own sister, my own family member in all these years. So my point is, it's not even really practicing medicine. It's more like when people come in. I mean, I don't even consider it really be a job, to be honest with you. It's just kind of, people come in, you're talking about whatever ails them, if there's something in particular, but the rest of the time you're just literally just talking. So it's almost like you're talking to family members, you're talking about this, you're talking about, in the course of all that, medicine's getting taken care of, or your blood pressure's getting treated, your diabetes getting treated. But that's just kind of almost an aside, as opposed to just you're sitting there having conversations with your patients. So that's weird when you think about practicing medicine per se, because to me it's not even really work. This is just what I do. So that's, I guess, and I think that kind of conveys most of the time when I'm in when I'm in with my patients. Kind of, I think that kind of conveys my approach to it.
Yeah, I love that. And you spoke earlier about the importance of community medicine or communal medicine and care, and that's clearly very important for you and the way that you again not practice medicine. We won't call it that, but just the way that you live in this
Mhm,
space and the way
mhm,
that you lead to those health outcomes for the people that come to you
mhm.
through that very community minded focus. So, what I guess my question here is just is that something that you think is becoming more prevalent in the medical field, or is it something that we need to pay more attention to and start bringing to the forefront more in that kind of community minded medical work?
That's a hard. I think it's a hard goal to achieve, and the reason why is due to the fact that majority yeah, all not, yeah, I would say the majority, if not all, doctors also have bills to pay. So unfortunately, when you have in a couple of my buddies, again, a couple of my buddies who have continued their father's practices in Flagstaff, for example, one's an orthopedic surgeon. I remember his dad used to say his son is not going to make, I don't know, an tenth, a 25th of what he made back in the day, due to the fact that just reimbursements are different. So that's fine and dandy, but the fact that, but now it's more of a, we hear the insurance companies waxing poetic about how they're trying to take care of you, blah blah blah. Your hospitals waxing poetic about how, oh, the patient this that. The reality of it, behind the scenes, it's a machine, and the idea is to keep churning out numbers, to keep seeing more people, blah blah blah. So at the same time, that's the main goal. They also have patient satisfaction scores, which is on base or reimbursement. So if you imagine, they're saying, all right, this patient better give you tens across the board. At the same time, you can only go in and see the patient for 3 minutes, because in order to make whatever net you have to make, you have to see 30 patients an hour. So to answer your questions, what they say is a goal. It should be the goal, but in reality, trying to achieve that goal can be nigh impossible due to the what's going on behind the scenes, of what you need to do to make a living in a world of reduced reimbursements on the provider side, not on the insurance side, because they continue making record profits every year. It's just less and less of that are getting passed on to the people who are in the public eye, who are the ones that are kind of scapegoating a lot of things. So yeah, I think the idea is to keep improving, because I think the more and better patient experiences you have, That's the key to getting through to your patients, the importance of preventive care, the importance of going to see your doctor, right? Because when you think about going to see a doctor, it's inconvenient as heck. A lot of times, I mean, you have stuff to do. Then you got to go to the doctor, you got to drive to the doctor, you got to do all this paperwork, you got to sit around, you wait, and you're thinking, especially if you're busy people, most people are busy. Most people got stuff to do. Like, dang, man, I got, I'm losing hours, I'm losing money, I got to go do this for my kids. I don't have one day off, and here I am wasted here. So in order to make people overcome just the entire inconvenience. I mean, no world anywhere is it convenient going to the doctor. I mean, it's more convenient if you're going for something you want. Maybe if you're going for Botox, maybe you're going for something that makes the experience more pleasant. But the idea of just going in order to kind of supersede the annoyance and inconvenience, we need to give the patient a real enough reason to do that. And I think that's when the doctor-patient relationship, the way that your doctor treats you, all that stuff is very important because I think that's the key is to get the patients on the same board, the only way on the same page as you, and you do that by giving them a good experience.
Yeah. One of the things that was mentioned in your bio is that you are bilingual and spend a lot of your time in South and Central America and Mexico. What sparked your interest in the Spanish language and culture? What made learning Spanish important to you?
Well, again, my wife is from Mexico, and then what else? As far as sheesh, what else? Just lots of things. But I think that my sister and I grew up. Like one of my best friends, his one of my old friends, his grandma lived directly behind my grandma. Mexican family. And I just remember as a kid, always spending so much time in their house for posadas, for quinceañeras, cumpleaños, Noche Vieja, New Year's Eve, all this stuff. So I remember just experiences like the music, the culture, the food. So I think it's probably a lot of times I think about where this affinity to the Latin culture comes from. And then when I got older, I have so many friends here in the community. So I think it's a passion that just was instilled at it. There I am. Sorry about that. All right. So a passion that was instilled at an early age is just taking the ball and ran with it. Something I really enjoy. And again, it's like one of those things. Is, I walk around. I'm always studying Spanish, reading Spanish, listening to Spanish because it's just like a hobby of mine. So I think it's just I have a real affinity to it.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Well, we are approaching our hour, so I want to thank you for spending this time with us and having this conversation with me. And I want to wrap up with just your final thoughts on what you think is something that's important for us to think about or carry from this conversation or keep at the forefront of our minds as we head into 2024, whether it's on Black men's health, mental health, the health of the nation in general, or anything else that you just want to leave our audience with.
Well, number one, check your labs. Check your labs. So I always recommend, because a lot of times, no matter how healthy you look, it's sometimes it's a scary experience because you don't want to know, but the majority of the time, it's like anything, there's nothing to be scared of. And then you have a nice baseline. So I always like people, when you get to be a certain age, at least when you get to be 25, 30, make an appointment to see your primary care doctor, get some labs drawn. And that oftentimes will give you a starting point for your life. So I always recommend that. You want to, don't follow the typical American diet. You want to, there's certain concepts when, in society, a lot of people talk about weight, they talk about diabetes, blood pressure. There's certain things that are kind of, it's not that hard. It's not that difficult. You don't need to do all the fancy this, fancy that. A lot of times it's just keeping it simple. I mean, certain basic rules. You can eat whatever you want to eat. Just can't eat that much of it. Move, be more active. I always tell people you can lose weight eating nothing but ice cream. If you eat, if you're eating ice cream in caloric deficit, obviously it's not a healthy way to do it. But I say that just to illustrate the point. You don't have to starve yourself to maintain a decent body weight. And when we talk about decent body weight, again, not everyone needs to look like a IG model or underwear model. You look perfectly great at 15 and 20% body fat. You don't need to be 7%. So a lot of these little things that you kind of learn as you go along with more experience that keeps you healthy and happy, body and mind. It sounds silly, but a lot of things is just like be kind to yourself and and kind of live in the real world as opposed to this made up media, social media world. It keeps a lot more people healthy and happy. So I think those are a few of the tidbits. And if you want any more tidbits, I always have a whole bunch of them.
Well, and to that last point, I understand from your sister that you also do podcasts or 5 minute conversation
No,
sort of
not
a
really.
thing.
I mean, not really. Doing podcasts is a pain in the butt, but sometimes I want. I think people don't realize how hard work that is actually coming up with material and then actually saying it and then editing it. It's not as easy as it looks. But the ones that do it, they are talented, very talented. The ones that do it and do it well, I mean, it's way harder than it looks.
Well, if you're taking ideas for any future conversations, I think there's going to be a lot of people out there that want to know how they can eat nothing but ice cream all year and still
Yeah,
lose
and
weight.
still lose weight.
So if
Yeah,
you want to
yeah,
figure that out for us,
absolutely.
please drop that knowledge next time. But yeah, thank you again so much for joining us tonight and having this conversation with me and being so open and transparent in things. It was definitely my pleasure to have a chance to speak with you.
That's just mine. Thank you so much, Cara.
Absolutely. And to our audience, as we always say, thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you continue this conversation with your networks and with your friends. Make sure that you're encouraging people to tune into these conversations all the time and follow up on the things that you learn from them and share them with your broader networks and friends and family and just keep the conversation going. So until next time, we wish you that you are well and that you stay blessed.
Yeah, happy holidays, all. Bye.